She owes me every penny for raising her. My own father's words cut through the courtroom like broken glass. The judge's face changed when she opened my file. Dad went white as paper. He had no idea what I'd been documenting for years. The truth was about to destroy his lies. She's nothing but a burden. I deserve to be paid back in full. My father says it's steady as stone. The gallery goes silent. Papers rustle. The heating system hums. I slide a thick folder to the court clerk. Coloured tabs mark each section. A rubber band holds it all together. Judge Paula Manning opens the cover. She pauses just for a heartbeat like a door catching on its frame. The opposing lawyer jumps to his feet, his chair scraping the floor. "Objection, Your Honour." Dad's face drains of colour. I grip the wooden rail in front of me to keep my hands steady. The old oak feels cool and marked by years of other people's battles. "Captain Sophia Mitchell, United States Marine Corps," I say when the judge looks up at me. The court officer, Ron, watches the judge's bench like a sailor watching storm clouds. He'd called me Mom at the security checkpoint and meant it with respect. "Objection overruled," Judge Manning says without even glancing at the lawyer. We'll proceed. The courthouse smells like floor wax and old paper. Somewhere in the hallway, a child whispers to their parent. It's a Tuesday morning in Cedarville, Ohio. An ordinary day, except for those words still hanging in the air. Burden. Paid back. I hadn't planned to wear my Marine uniform. I don't like mixing military service with family problems. But my appointment at the Veterans Office ran long, and there wasn't time to change before meeting my attorney. Linda Park had tapped the folder tabs with her pen and given me simple advice. Short answers, no speeches. Let the paperwork speak for itself. Judges appreciate facts. Frank from the Veterans of Foreign Wars had met me on the sidewalk outside. Documentation beats emotion, he'd said, squeezing my shoulder in support. Show them the evidence that matters. A month ago, a certified letter arrived at my post office box. My father's name was printed in the return address corner. Inside was a small claims court complaint demanding back rent and household expenses. The months were listed like guesswork. The total amount, he claimed, could buy a decent used truck. I sat in my Jeep and read it over and over until anger heated my face. Then I read it again slowly, the way we read military orders. What are the facts? What needs to be done? What's the best path forward? I called Linda because Helen from church had used her for estate matters. Linda answered on the second ring. By dinner time, she'd given me a list of what to gather. Bank statements, military pay allotments, tax receipts. "Bring proof," she said. "Emotions don't hold up in court." Now the judge nods at me. "Miss Mitchell, tell me in simple terms what this folder contains." "Receipts, Your Honour," I say. "Money I sent home in documentation of what it paid for." The room shifts slightly. Everyone understands receipts. The opposing lawyer, Mr. Field, leans forward. "Your Honour, we object to any lengthy narrative." "You'll have your turn," the judge tells him firmly. "Miss Mitchell, start from the beginning that matters." The beginning that matters is when my mother got sick. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton. I set up an automatic payment from my military pay into my parents' joint bank account to help with the mortgage and property taxes. When hospice care began, I increased the amount. I have dates and amounts for everything. Field jumps in. "And you lived at home during those years?" "On leave sometimes. Mostly I was deployed or on base. When I was home, I paid my way. I sent money because they needed it." "So these were gifts," he says. "Support for my family," I say. "Call it whatever you want." A nervous laugh starts and dies in the back row. I don't turn around. This town is small. People come to court like they go to church to see how stories end. My father stares at the table. His hands lie open, the nails scrubbed clean. He never cleaned up like this for my birthdays. The thought flashes through my mind and I let it pass. Page 2 is a summary, I tell the judge. The tabs correspond to specific months. The last tab contains a letter from the bank. I don't reveal what it says yet. My mouth is dry. Outside, a motorcycle roars past and fades. The courthouse clock chimes noon even though it's only 10:30 like it has for years. Nobody looks up. Dad finally meets my eyes. His gaze flickers over my military insignia and captain's bars. When I first enlisted, he called it stubborn foolishness. When I was promoted to captain, he said rank was just putting in time with fancier decorations. In this courtroom, none of that matters. Only the paperwork matters. "Proceed," the judge says. "We'll hear from the plaintiff and then review the exhibits." Field asks his questions like a man who's asked them 100 times before. Dates, numbers, phrases like benefit received and unjust enrichment. Dad answers in short sentences. "She was never there," he says. When she was home, she used the house like a hotel. I maintained everything. By maintained, you mean repairs you paid for? Field prompts. I mean, I did what a man does, Dad says. I deserve to be made whole. The words land heavy in the room. Made whole. A few people tilt their heads, weighing those words against what they know about bills and funerals and winter heating costs. Captain Mitchell, Judge Manning says, bring me the folder. I carry it with both hands so nothing will shake loose. She opens the first tab and reads half a page, then the next. The room leans toward the papers. It's quiet enough to hear footsteps in the hallway. A clerk passes with bundled mail. A teenager in an oversized suit tugs at his cuffs. Ordinary life continues around this thin moment where families argue about what they owe each other. The judge closes the folder for a moment, then opens it again. Another small pause. Field's pen clicks twice. He's seen the same document she has. Objection. Foundation, he says too quickly. Overruled, Judge Manning says calmly. We'll establish foundation when we need to. Dad's jaw tightens. He looks at the packet like it might explode. I think about logistics because that's my training. Move what needs to move. No more, no less. I didn't come here to give speeches. I came to present facts in order and let them stand on their own. Thank you, Miss Mitchell. The judge says, you may step back. We'll examine each exhibit as needed. I step back. My hands feel strangely light without the weight of the folder. A square of summer sunlight falls across the doorway. I square my shoulders and breathe. This is how the day my father demanded to be paid back in full begins. Burnt coffee. A courthouse clock that's always wrong. A court officer who says "Mom" like a promise. And a stack of proof I had to hold with both hands to keep steady when I set it down. When people ask where I'm from, I say Cedar County and let them picture cornfields stretching flat. A water tower that needs paint, 2 traffic lights. Cedarville sits between the hills and the river where folks know who bought the old Henderson place and which church makes the best pie. It's a town that raises you gentle and tough at the same time. My mother Margaret worked nights at the nursing home. She always carried butterscotch candies and kept a calendar with bill due dates marked in red ink. My father Robert hung drywall until his shoulders hunched and his hands turned rough as sandpaper. My brother James came 3 years before me. Daddy's helper. Daddy's shadow in the pickup truck. By age 8, he could talk with men at the hardware store and get a free bottle of pop. We grew up on Willow Creek Road in a 1-story house with gutters that sang when it rained. The garage stayed neat. The garden produced too many tomatoes every summer. Dad kept receipts in an old coffee can and pride in his voice. In our house, nothing was free. Everything had a price. When James wanted a new bike, he got it on credit, which meant weekend chores with Dad's hand heavy on his shoulder. When I asked for basketball shoes, Dad handed me Mom's gardening gloves. Work first, reward later. Mom squeezed my hand and slipped $10 into my pocket. You're not a debt, she whispered. You're my daughter. Summers meant county fairs, church picnics, and baseball on the radio in Dad's truck. Old men in worn caps taught me card games and how to read a person's eyes when they're bluffing. Frank Delaney called me kiddo and said the Marines would give me backbone. By senior year, I could pack efficiently and read a room. A military recruiter's pamphlet on the school cafeteria table looked like an invitation to something bigger. Dad picked up the pamphlet like it was dirty. Military is for men, he said. Men do the heavy lifting, women do the tending. Mom said, men forget who took care of them when they couldn't walk or talk, and told me to follow my path without apologizing for it. I signed up. Boot camp turned blisters into strength and taught me to speak when necessary and stay quiet when not. Logistics suited my mind. I like orderly lists and making sure things arrive where they're supposed to. Letters from home brought recipes and town gossip. When I made sergeant, Mum drew stars around my name in her letter. When I became captain, Dad sent a card that said, "Time served is one way to climb the ladder." James called to say he was proud. Then asked if I could get him a military surplus vehicle for his car lot. It doesn't work that way, I told him. Everything here is accounted for. Between deployments and training, Mom's voice grew weaker on the phone. It's just a rough patch, she'd say. The rough patch turned into doctor appointments. I set up an automatic payment from my military pay to their joint account. Mortgage, utilities, property taxes. It felt like any supply shipment. Once it starts moving, keep it steady so nothing tips over. Back home, we moved Mum's chair by the south window where afternoon sun warmed her favourite blanket. An oxygen machine whispered constantly. Church ladies brought casseroles with names written in permanent marker. I used my leave time to change light bulbs, haul trash and pay the county tax at the office where the clerk knew my high school team. Dad stood in doorways counting weeks between visits and bills. Meters running, he'd say, as if life was a taxi we were keeping waiting. When I tried to hand Mom a check directly, she'd say we're even and pat my wrist. I'd slip it into the coffee can anyway. For winter heating, I'd say. She'd glance at Dad's back and nod. In those final months, we moved more money than I'd ever imagined. Some was mine. Some came from a credit line Dad called temporary help money. He didn't like reading the fine print. The funeral was on a Thursday. Frank and the VFW lined the church driveway with flags. Pastor Ruth read scripture about seasons. People hugged me too long. James kept his arms crossed. Afterward, we ate ham sandwiches on soft white bread. Somebody's aunt said, "Your mother talked about you every single week." Dad sat in the corner tapping a pen against a yellow legal pad nobody had given him. The quiet afterward hummed with appliances and emptiness. I cleaned out drawers full of hospital bracelets, medication schedules, care instructions in triplicate. I kept the automatic payments going because stopping felt like abandoning my post. When I came home on weekend leave, Dad started using words like room and board. At first it sounded like a bad joke. Then it didn't. James tried to smooth things over. He's from a different generation, he'd say. He talks tough but doesn't mean it. Then he'd ask if I had connections for surplus equipment. One Saturday, I took Dad to the diner. We sat at the counter where he could watch them cook his eggs on the grill. The waitress called him Hon. He told her she was too young for a wedding ring. She rolled her eyes at me and smiled because that's what you do. Dad tested his coffee and set it down. People should pay their own way, he said to his plate. I always have. I let the sizzle of hash browns answer him. Spring arrived slowly. I mowed the lawn between training assignments because grass responds to straight lines if you're patient. The mailbox filled with advertisements, seed catalogues, county fair announcements. A pink envelope arrived smelling of drugstore perfume. Donna. Her name appeared over meatloaf one night as if it had always existed. She's a friend, Dad said, chewing like the subject had an off switch. I rinsed my plate and set it in the drying rack. The faucet squeaked. The house kept its small grudges. I kept proof because logistics teaches that proof is memory written down. Receipts in a folder. Tax stamps in order. A list inside the pantry of when filters were changed. It wasn't about leverage then. It was about keeping a house from falling apart. I didn't know about the locks yet. I didn't know which of his words were jokes and which were bills coming due. I only knew that each time I drove south toward base with the sun low and the radio quiet, the house in my rearview mirror looked more like an account we hadn't settled. I came home on a Friday with 2 bags of uniforms to wash and a head full of tasks. Sun lay flat on Willow Creek, and the peonies had scattered pink petals across the grass. I still had the spare key in my wallet, Mom's key with a little painted bluebird charm. It fit the way it always had, but the lock wouldn't turn. New deadbolt. I tried again and felt metal refusing metal. I rang the doorbell. The sound echoed into the house I could smell but not enter. Floor cleaner, old coffee, footsteps. The door opened a crack, chain on, Dad's eye in the gap like a suspicious neighbor. You changed the locks, I said. House needs security, he said. People come and go. I'm your daughter, I said, and heard how small it sounded. He shut the door, slid the chain, opened it fully. Adult children pay rent like everybody else. Behind him on the coat rack hung a purse, fake leather with a tassel zipper, leopard print lining visible. A floral tote bag leaned below it with the monogram DM. I could hear light laughter from the kitchen, the clink of a spoon in a cup. Donna, I said, because it was easier than saying you didn't tell me she moved in. She helps out, he said. Our house is work. I sent money for years, I said. For the house. That was charity to me, he said, shrugging like it meant nothing. And I'm done accepting charity. He stepped back like a landlord making a point. I wasn't in uniform. I'd stopped at the VFW for Frank's hug and a cup of coffee, then driven over in jeans and an old base t-shirt. It's strange how clothes change what men hear. I stood on the doormat and looked at the worn spot where Mom used to tape a paper heart every Valentine's Day. Can I come in? I asked. Depends, he said. How long are you staying? How much are you planning to contribute? Donna came around the corner with 2 coffee mugs. She was younger than him by at least 15 years, with hair the colour of honey from a bottle. She carried herself like someone who'd decided to be cheerful no matter what. Hi, Sophie, she sang. I was just telling your dad we should update these cabinet doors. They're so outdated. They were Mom's choice, I said. Well, of course, she said, her smile dimming slightly. But time moves forward. Not today, I said. Today I need my bedroom and the file box under the bed. Dad scratched his jaw. Bedroom's a craft room now. You'll have to take the couch. He meant what he said. He wanted me to argue so he could call it drama. I set my bags down and stepped inside anyway because some lines you don't let slide further. The carpet gave under my feet where Mom's rocking chair had lived. The wall where our graduation photos had hung was blank. A TV mount waited in the empty space. My throat tightened. I kept my face neutral. 2 nights, I said. Laundry file box, then I'm gone. He let me pass with a sigh meant for the neighbors to hear. Meters running. We survived dinner by talking about baseball. Donna said open floor plan twice. Dad repeated grown children pay rent like it was scripture. When I offered to buy pizza, he said that's a start, as if the crust was a down payment. Sunday we went to church because that's what bodies do even when hearts wander. Potluck afterward in the fellowship hall under harsh fluorescent lights. Deviled eggs arranged like soldiers. Green bean casserole with crispy onions on top. Red jello mold with fruit suspended like specimens. Dad positioned himself where the food line had to bend around him. He told Mrs. Patterson I was home with medals and bills and laughed too loud at his own joke. The laughter died when people saw my face. Frank squeezed my elbow and whispered, "Don't take the bait." Pastor Ruth's mouth went tight. James arrived late wearing a shirt with his dealership logo and kissed the air near Donna's cheek. "The old man's just old-fashioned," he whispered to me, loading his plate high. "He runs his mouth but doesn't mean it." "Tell him that," I said. "He hears me less than he hears you," James said, which was a kind lie. I drove back to the house before the afternoon nap hour because paperwork behaves better in a quiet house. The kitchen drawer on the left had always been the junk drawer. Tape, dull scissors, twist ties, rubber bands turned to powder. I pulled it open and the weight of unopened mail slid forward. The first envelope was from the county treasurer. 2 notices stuck together with humidity, edges soft. The second was from the credit union, bold black letters saying past due notice. Then another, notice of intent to accelerate. My stomach did a slow roll like a car sliding into a ditch. The dates jumped around like shuffled cards. Time had been rearranged. Looking for something? Donna leaned in the doorway like a helpful neighbor in a commercial. Receipts, I said. She waved paint samples like little flags. We're going with warm neutrals. Better for resale value. Resale, I said. Her smile flickered. You know, eventually. It's smart to think ahead. In the den, Dad had his legal pad out, columns drawn with a ruler. He wrote numbers and underlined them twice. "Figure out your share for last Christmas," he said without looking up. "You used the heat." "I was here 3 days," I said. "I paid the entire gas bill that month." He tapped the pad with his finger. "That was a gift." Different ledger. "Is there a ledger with a mortgage payment in it?" I asked. He closed the pad like shutting someone's mouth. "You don't talk to me like I'm some deadbeat. I talk to you like someone who paid the treasurer while you were measuring cabinet doors," I said quietly. I watched the words land. "The county wants its money. So does the credit union." He stood. "Girl, you don't know what a man carries when the house sits on his shoulders." "I carried part of it," I said. "You just didn't notice because you were looking down." He pushed past me to the sink, clattered a glass into it like an exclamation point. Donna came in with her paint chips and set them in the dish rack. Nobody laughed. That night, I slept on the couch under a quilt that smelled like laundry detergent and something from my mother's drawer. Lavender, maybe? Or just the memory of lavender? The living room clock marked each hour like a patient teacher. I lay there thinking how a house can feel smaller when you're told you don't belong in it. Monday, I found my file box under the bed in the craft room, wedged between a sewing machine and a crate of artificial plants. Inside were military pay stubs, the automatic payment confirmations, bank statements showing my name and their account number, copies of cancelled checks for property taxes with the treasurer's stamp. I spread everything on the kitchen table and made piles like organising a supply convoy. What came in, where it went, who signed for it? Dad came in, stopped, breathed through his nose. "Going to count pennies against your old man," he said. "I'm going to count," I said. "Counting isn't cruel. It's clear. You military types," he said, half sneer, half pride he couldn't quite hide. "Always keeping tallies." "It keeps people honest," I said, "including me." He stared. He was good at staring. When he ran out of stare, he said, "Fine. You want a number? I'll give you a number." 3 days later, a certified letter waited in my post office box. Green delivery card attached. The clerk slid it under the glass and said, "Sign here." The complaint was typed neatly. Plaintiff Robert Mitchell. Defendant Sophia Mitchell. Claim for back rent and household expenses. Benefits received. Numbers in a tidy column that added up to enough for a decent used truck. I read it in the parking lot while a man in work clothes overfilled his soda and whistled an old country song. The paper shook in my hands until I set it on my leg to steady it. I called James. "He filed a lawsuit against me," I said. "Small claims isn't the end of the world," he said. "He's just posturing." "It's a lawsuit," I said. "He'll calm down," James said. "Let me talk to him." "Talk is cheap," I said, and heard Frank's voice in my mouth. I called Linda Park because Helen from church said she was straightforward. Linda listened until my breathing slowed, then said, "Bring what proves what? Bank statements, allotments, taxes paid. Don't worry about speeches. Judges prefer paperwork." Late that night, I opened the junk drawer again and found a paper towel folded around 4 property tax receipts like precious cargo. One had my handwriting, one had Mom's. 2 had no payment mark at all. I arranged them in a line. I don't pray out loud often, but I did then. 1 clean sentence. Let me do this without being cruel. Outside, crickets worked their steady rhythm. In the darkness of the kitchen, the piles of paper looked like small, orderly cities. Locks, ledgers, excuses. I decided to count every piece until the story added up. Whether anyone liked the total or not. The Cedar County Veterans Service Office sits in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax service. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. A laminated chart listing military campaigns by year curls at one corner. Denise at the front desk has perfectly styled grey hair and a stamp pad that leaves purple marks on forms. "You bring a flash drive?" she asks. "I brought everything," I say, lifting my backpack onto the counter. We print my military service history and the payment confirmations, highlighting where money left my pay each month and went home. Denise feeds paper steadily. The copier warms the room with its mechanical breathing. A man in a veteran's cap waits for his ride to the VA hospital and tells me about the time his unit lost equipment and found it exactly where everyone said it wouldn't be. We all laugh the way you do when the punchline is just, "Of course it was." At the VFW, Frank slides me a foam cup and a yellow notepad. "Documentation beats emotion," he says again. "Make a list like you're loading supplies." I write headers. Allotments, taxes, mortgage. Then subheaders. Dates, amounts, proof. Frank adds names. People remember stories. Judges remember names. Linda Park meets me at her office on Main Street where diplomas hang perfectly straight and a plant thrives in the corner. She reads while I sit quietly. Her glasses slide up when she sees the allotment totals. "Okay," she says. "This is solid." Judges appreciate math. She explains what I already feel. His complaint tells a story without numbers. Yours has the numbers. She taps the letter from the credit union. This one could cause problems if ignored. I won't ignore it, I say. Linda asks permission to call the credit union. She uses a voice I've heard chaplains use, steady and respectful. She asks for Carol in mortgage services. She waits. She smiles at the hold music like an old friend with no rhythm. "Carol," she says. "I'm calling about loan number." Her pen moves. My client isn't the borrower. She's the borrower's daughter who's been paying property taxes. "She received your notice." Pause. "I understand." "We're not seeking confidential information." Pause. "I'm asking about general policy options for delinquent loans." After the call, she leans back. "They'll talk if you go in with the letter and identification. No guarantees, but small credit unions sometimes sell delinquent loans to clear their books. It's rare for an individual. Not illegal." "I don't want to humiliate him," I say. "We're not creating theatre," she says. "We're putting the house on a foundation that doesn't wobble. Remember, you're not buying a house. You'd be buying the IOU attached to it. That gives you rights and responsibilities. Nothing dramatic." It turns out Carol is the kind of woman who keeps tissues near the stapler and knows every teller's grandchildren by name. She walks me through the numbers quietly, sticking to what the letter already revealed. "We do sometimes transfer mortgages," she says, "usually to another bank. But we can transfer to an individual if our board approves and you pay the outstanding principal, late fees, and a transfer fee." "How much for the transfer?" I ask. $200, she says, almost apologetically. "Plus recording fees." Linda nods like she expected this. She doesn't look at me, which I appreciate. It gives me space to rearrange months in my head where no one can see. I have savings from deployment that I never touched because it felt like crossing a line. I can live simply for a long time. Marines learn to make everything stretch. Carol prints a draft transfer document with a word I have to repeat twice to pronounce. This assigns the loan to you, she says. It's just paperwork in formal language. She smiles. Our board will initial each page. You'll record it at the courthouse so everyone knows who holds it. Everyone turns out to be a counter at the Cedar County Recorder's office with a bell you ring after someone finishes telling you about their grandchild. The clerk wears a sweater with pumpkins even though it's July. The air conditioning makes it October. She checks the legal description, the parcel number, the signatures, the notary's seal. She flips to the last page and stamps it firmly. The stamp leaves a red rectangle showing the exact date and time. 2:47 p.m. So if anyone questions it later, she says, the clock will testify. She slides me a receipt. That's your instrument number, she says, tapping the corner. Makes it official to anyone who asks. I walk out into sunshine that looks different. The sky is the same sky over the fairgrounds and the old mill. But I feel like I'm carrying a quiet engine. Back at Linda's office, we build a binder like assembling a field kit. Front pocket has the case caption and hearing date my identification. First tab, a summary table with columns straight enough to satisfy a drill instructor. Second, military payment printouts with highlights. Third, cancelled checks to the treasurer, each with that rubber stamp saying paid like a clean verdict. Fourth, text messages printed out. Not all of them. Only the ones where my father wrote used your money to keep the roof on, and your share is past due. Fifth, the credit union's notice letter. Sixth, the loan assignment with the recorder's stamp and instrument number, like a birth certificate for a fact. Last tab is your note to yourself, Linda says, handing me an index card. 2 lines. Why you're doing this, in case your mouth goes dry. I write. Keep the house honest. Don't be cruel. Frank drops by with a manila envelope. From the treasurer, he says with a wink. Inside are copies of 5 years of tax receipts, certified by a woman who taught me in Sunday school. The staples are neat and proud. We sit at the VFW with the binder between us like a chessboard. Men drift by and pat the cover like a blessing. One tells me about a judge who hated long speeches so much. He used a kitchen timer. Another says only answer what they ask. Frank says, speak slowly enough that your bones can hear you. At home, Donna spreads paint samples on the table where my document piles had been. We decided on desert sand, she says. Then sees the binder and steps back like it might stain her samples. Dad looks at the red recorder stamp and goes still in a way I haven't seen, like a deer realizing the shadow isn't just wind-moving branches. You went and made it official, he says. I wrote down what was true and filed it where truth goes, I say. He flips a page with one finger. His nail is clean, the cuticle raw. So now you think you own me? I don't own anything, I say. I hold a promise you made to a bank that comes with duties. One of them is not lying about who paid what. He shuts the binder like closing an argument. Court will see what kind of daughter sues her father. I didn't sue you, I say. You sued me. I brought receipts. He leaves the room like a man leaving a conversation he didn't win. Donna gathers her samples and mumbles apologies. When the house is quiet, I open the binder again and touch the red stamp. I'm not proud. I'm tired, but tired feels better than helpless. Before bed, I slide a second folder into my bag. Copies of everything on regular paper I won't mind handing over. Marines carry backups. I put the index card in front where my fingers will find it if my brain runs ahead. The night before the hearing, I iron my shirt because starch is easier to control than feelings. I didn't plan to wear the uniform. It feels like bringing a marching band to a library. But the morning schedule shifted. Stop at veteran's office, print one last document, no time to change. The uniform went on. If anyone thought I wore it to show off, that's their story to carry. Mine was a binder and a promise to tell the truth slowly. No drama, no speech. Just paperwork. Court Officer Ron calls the room to order and reads the case title like a shopping list. He doesn't emphasize anything. Robert Mitchell, plaintiff, versus Sophia Mitchell, defendant. He says it plainly, and the words sit between us like a stone in a field. We're squeezed onto the morning calendar with a loose dog complaint and a fence dispute. The judge removes her reading glasses and looks at both tables like a mother watching children argue. Counsel, she nods to Field, then to Miss Park. Linda sits beside me with her notepad aligned perfectly. She touches my elbow once, a quick check-in, then folds her hands. Mr. Field, Judge Manning says you filed this case. Begin. Field stands smoothly. He thanks the court. He explains room and board and benefits received as if the words could build a bridge over what's inconvenient. He says I took advantage of the family home while contributing minimally. He gestures vaguely at me with 2 fingers as if I were a footnote he could erase. Call your first witness, the judge says. He calls my father. Dad walks stiffly to the stand, right hand raised. He says I do like a man promising to be honest about the weather. On direct examination, he keeps his voice measured, the way he used to talk to building inspectors. I maintained that house, he says. I shoveled snow. I fixed the furnace. I cooked meals. She came and went. I paid. Did your daughter pay you rent? Field asks. No, Dad says, eyes on the table. She sent money to her mother, which is different. Sustained, Judge Manning warns gently when Field starts drifting into a story about my muddy shoes in 2008. Let's focus on this claim. Field hands up a page from Dad's legal pad. Columns, underlines, a total. The judge makes a sound like recognizing handwriting but questioning the math. Cross-examination, she says. Linda stands, spine relaxed but straight. Mr. Mitchell, she says like a neighbor borrowing sugar. Did you ever tell your daughter in writing that you expected rent? No, Dad says. Did you accept money your daughter deposited into your joint account? Yes. Did you use that money to pay taxes and utilities? Yes. Thank you, Linda says and sits. No speech, no drama. Let paper talk. Defense, the judge says, your witness or your exhibits? Linda nods at me. My boots feel heavy, but the floor is solid. I raise my right hand, say I do, and sit. The Bible smells faintly of furniture polish. I can hear the wall clock marking time like a patient teacher. Captain Mitchell, Linda says, why did you send money home? Because my mother got sick, I say. Because the house needed it. Did you send it as a loan expecting repayment? No. She points to the binder. What is Exhibit A? My military pay stubs and automatic payment confirmations with dates highlighted. And Exhibit B? Copies of cancelled checks to the county treasurer. Property taxes paid, some signed by me. And Exhibit C? The credit union notice letter addressed to my father with the mortgage loan number. And Exhibit D? The assignment of the mortgage loan to me with the endorsement, recorded with the county. It has the instrument number and recorder's stamp. Field springs up. Objection. Foundation. Relevance. Overruled, Judge Manning says. We'll see where this goes. Proceed. I keep my eyes on the tabs. My heart maintains the rhythm it learned on long marches. Steady, unremarkable. Linda walks me through dates and amounts like guiding a piano through a familiar hymn. No flourishes. Field approaches for cross-examination, almost smiling. Captain, you say you sent money voluntarily. I did. You weren't living at home full-time? I was not. So these were gifts? They were support, I say. Call it what you want. The bills got paid. He nods at the judge as if to say, see. And this assignment, he says, holding up the stamped page with 2 fingers like a small fish. You arranged this recently, after my client filed. Correct. Yes. So you bought a loan to hold over your father? No, I say. I assumed a loan to keep the house honest so the bank wouldn't do worse. Worse, he says. Foreclose, I say. The word lands like a tool on concrete. The gallery shifts. Foreclosure isn't a legal term in Cedar County. It's a neighbor's truck disappearing and grass growing tall. The judge leans forward. She flips to the assignment document. The red recorder stamp stares back like a stop sign. She goes still that small pause when everything catches. Counsel, she says to Field, your client filed to collect back rent from a daughter who, according to this record, has paid taxes, paid utilities, and now holds the loan securing his house. Field starts, Your Honor. Sit. Her voice isn't loud, but it settles the room. Captain Mitchell, did you threaten foreclosure? No, I say. I have a repayment plan drafted. If he'd asked for help directly, we could have signed it at the kitchen table. Do you intend to make him homeless? No. The word is simple and true. I intend to stop being called a debtor when the math says I'm not. The judge looks at Dad. Mr. Mitchell, did you know the mortgage was assigned? Dad's mouth tightens. I suspected when she brought that binder in here. Did you tell your lawyer before he filed this claim? He hesitates. No. Field shifts his weight, then thinks better of speaking. Anything further on cross, the judge asks. Field tries another angle. Captain, in text messages, you claim I paid the county when technically you didn't. That's accusatory. It's factual, I say. The receipts show it. No more questions, he says, and it sounds like a truce he didn't want. The judge removes her glasses, cleans them with a cloth in slow circles that cool the room by 5 degrees. She looks at me, then at my father, then at the folder again, as if it might explain itself. This court isn't a confessional, she says. It's a set of columns. What I have is a plaintiff who brought a claim for reimbursement without disclosing that the defendant has been funding the tax office and now holds the loan on the very property he claims he maintained at his expense. That changes the equation. She writes for a full minute while nobody breathes loudly. The radiator ticks. Somewhere outside, a truck downshifts and recovers. Here's the ruling, she says at last. The plaintiff's claim is dismissed with prejudice. Costs to the plaintiff. Additionally, the court imposes a modest sanction to cover the defendant's documented expenses in preparing these exhibits, based on the plaintiff's failure to disclose material facts before filing. I am not entertaining a counterclaim today. If the parties have a housing dispute, handle it in the proper division where the recorded priority of the loan and tax lines will control. She looks at me. Captain, don't weaponize that paper. Yes, Your Honor, I say. She looks at Dad. Mr. Mitchell, this courtroom is not a place to balance resentments. You have a family matter. Settle it somewhere that doesn't echo. Her gavel is one clean tap, a carpenter setting a nail without splitting wood. We stand because the officer tells us to, and because our legs demand it. Frank sits in the back row, eyes bright the way veterans' eyes get when justice finally arrives. James stares at the floor as if it could rescue us all. Donna twists her purse strap until it creaks. Dad doesn't look at me. His colour has gone the flat pale of a man who thought he had a map and then saw the road sign pointing elsewhere. He reaches for his legal pad and misses by an inch like his hand can't quite remember trust. Linda leans toward me without turning. Breathe, she says. Then we'll discuss next steps. Outside on the stairs where air moves, I think of the index card in the binder pocket. Keep the house honest. Don't be cruel. And I feel my shoulders drop a notch I didn't know I was holding. The judge was right. This room was columns. The rest is ours. The hallway releases us onto the courthouse steps like water from a dam. Slow at first, then everyone at once. The stone is warm through our shoes. A flag snaps against its pole in wind that smells like hot asphalt and the factory beyond. Someone's niece bounces a baby. The world continues, but people linger near the rail to see what a story looks like in daylight. Linda guides me to the side under the covered walkway. Stairs are where people make trouble or make peace, she says. Let's aim for peace. Frank is already there, leaning against the pillar like he owns it. You did good, he says quietly. Don't celebrate too hard. Dad emerges with Field on one side and Donna on the other, both talking at him without being heard. James hovers behind, a little boy again. I watch Dad's face meet the light. He blinks like stepping from a dark room into noon. Pale looks different outside, thinner somehow. Two women from church stand together by the ramp. Pastor Ruth is with them, holding a folder like a hymnal. A young reporter in a wrinkled shirt holds his phone pointed down. Off the record, he keeps saying to no one, I'm just here if anyone wants to comment. Nobody does. A clerk from the civil division comes out with papers, crosses the landing and pins the week's mediation calendar to the bulletin board by the door. Mediation dates for foreclosure cases already in the pipeline. Names we don't know, addresses we do. The paper lifts in the breeze, then settles. People look because people always look. Frank touches my sleeve. That's the board you keep your name off of, he says softly, like warning me about a drop-off on a dark road. Linda opens her folder and holds it so only I can see. Here's what we came prepared with, she says. The top page is one sheet, 12-point font, no filler. Forbearance and repayment agreement. It has blanks already filled. Arrears total, 12 equal payments. Automatic draft on the first. Escrow for taxes so the county never sends another pink notice. And one paragraph titled, No harassment, no public disparagement. If either side breaks the terms, the agreement ends and the holder of the loan may proceed as law allows. Underneath, a notary block and a date line labelled executed on the courthouse steps, Linda's small joke about the truth. You sure? She asks. I'm sure, I say. Dad looks our way like a man watching a wasp and hoping it keeps flying. Field raises a hand. Wait. Then walks over, chin tucked, wary like approaching an unknown dog. Captain, he says tightly. Miss Park. Linda smiles her calm librarian smile. Mr. Field. He glances at the paper. What is this? A way out, Linda says. No one loses a roof. No one loses face. Too late for face, he mutters, but takes the page and scans. He's a quick reader. 12 payments. Taxes escrowed. No contact language except for house business. Cure terms if a payment bounces. He licks his lips. You drafted this before today? I draft things, Linda says. Field looks back at Dad. Dad has one hand on the rail. The skin on his knuckles is thin and shiny like worn leather. Donna's still talking in his ear about selling later when it's tidy. And James is rubbing his jaw the way he does when deciding whether to make a joke. He doesn't. Let me confer with my client, Field says, which is lawyer for let me try to make this horse drink. They huddle 10 paces away. People watch but pretend not to. Frank clears his throat, and half the old men on the steps adjust their caps and wait the way men wait at a tailgate, sympathy without smothering. The young reporter drifts closer. Do you want to say anything on background? He asks me. About the service aspect, the uniform makes a strong photo. I keep my eyes on Dad. We're a family, I say. Paper keeps us honest. It doesn't need a headline. He nods like I gave him something bigger than a quote. That's fair, he says and steps back. Field returns with Dad, who stands straighter now, as if remembering he has a backbone. It hurts a little to see and helps a little too. Both things at once. Field holds out the agreement. My client has conditions. Linda lifts an eyebrow. Autopay on the 15th, not the 1st, Field says. That's when his social security arrives. And remove public disparagement. He's a plain-spoken man. He'll forget. Keep the 15th, Linda says. But the no disparagement stays. He can forget to say something mean. Or he can write it on paper at home and not bring it to church. A laugh escapes from the back. Pastor Ruth coughs it into her hand. Dad speaks for himself. I'm not signing a gag order, he says. It's a manners agreement, Frank says, not unkindly. Most of us signed it with our mothers when we were 6. I look at Dad in the light. I can see stubble where he missed with the razor. I'm not trying to take your dignity, I say. I'm trying to stop being the town story you tell when you're angry. He looks at the board with mediation dates. He knows 3 names. We all do. You don't talk about them in line at the grocery store because it doesn't help. He looks back at me and exhales through his nose. You'll flip this on me if I mess up. No, I say. The bank would have. I'm giving you a plan. Silence is a tool if you don't fear it. We let it work. All right, he says at last, the word worn smooth. 15th. No running me down. No running her down either. Unless the sump pump fails. Then I'm cursing at the pump, not at her. He tries a smile. It breaks, then holds. We'll need a notary, Field says. Practical again now that a road has appeared. Denise at Veterans can stamp it, Frank offers. Or the recorder has a woman with a pineapple on her desk. She'll swear you in between people registering deeds. We'll use the recorder, Linda says, since that's where this started to be official. We move as a group, like a funeral or a wedding. Not talking much because the sound of shoes on tile says enough. The notary is the pineapple lady. She checks IDs like a professional, neat and firm. Dad's hands shake when he signs. He laughs it off. Low blood sugar. No one argues with the excuse. My pen makes a dry whisper on the paper. Linda signs as witness the notary stamps. The ink blooms its small cold blue. Back outside, Frank takes the extra copies and holds them level, reverent as hymn books. Donna looks relieved, then slightly disappointed. Like drama was a balloon she'd hoped to keep floating. James sticks out his hand to me, then turns it into an awkward hug. He whispers, you saved his rear end and mine too, because the lot runs on a credit line Dad sometimes tapped. The young reporter lifts his phone to chest height and asks, just a name and a line for the record. Folks like a quote with their coffee. I look at Dad. He looks at the ground. I shake my head. Tell them the house has a plan, I say. Tell them we signed it where the light was good. Pastor Ruth starts the murmur that ends community wars. Well now. It spreads, small and human. Men drift away. The baby yawns. The board by the door lifts in the wind and settles flat again. The day leans back toward ordinary. Dad clears his throat. Sophie, he says, like he's not sure he's allowed to use my name. You write down the first payment date and I'll bring cash to the credit union. I don't do computers. I'll set it up, I say. You just don't miss. He nods, a carpenter's nod when the bubble sits dead center. He takes off his cap. His scalp is pale where sun never finds it. I'm going to tell people we worked it out. Good, I say. Tell them the truth. He puts the cap back on and walks down the steps slowly. Donna matches his shorter stride. James lingers, then follows, hands in pockets, shoulders up like maybe weather's coming and maybe it's not. Frank squeezes my shoulder. You kept your promise to your card, he says. You didn't get cruel. I got tired, I say. Tired works, he says. Tired people build fences that stay straight. Linda checks her watch. I'll file the memorandum with the court so there's a paper trail, she says. That way, if anyone forgets, the clerk will remember for them. The flags snap. The sun warms the stone. For a second, I feel the smallest thing. Not triumph. Not even relief. Just the absence of tilt. The house isn't fixed. Neither are we. But the ledgers have names again, and the town saw us set them straight. By the 15th of the month, the bank took what it was owed without making it hurt. Carol at the credit union set up autopay, while Dad watched her hands move, admiring the efficiency like it was carpentry. He signed where she pointed. She gave him a printout he folded and refolded until the crease turned soft. First one's the hardest, she told him. After that, it's habit. He nodded, cap in his lap. I'm good at habits. The no disparagement paragraph did half the work I'd hoped and twice what I hadn't expected. Dad still talked loudly, but he paused before using my name in a punchline. At church, he stuck to weather and what the baseball team needed. When people asked how we were, he said, "We got a plan, which is the kindest way to tell a story's middle." Donna learned the sound of the sump pump and stopped calling me when it ran. She still said open floor plans sometimes, but softer, like an inside joke with herself. James sent me a picture of the first payment receipt with a thumbs-up emoji. Then a picture of a used truck he'd finally moved off the lot. "We're all keeping our lanes," he wrote. It was the truest thing he'd texted me. I kept the binder in the hall closet behind the vacuum. Each month, I slid in the credit union's confirmation and the county tax escrow statement with its neat bar graphs. Paper is a calendar that can't lie. When the judge's sanction check posted to my account, I wrote court costs on a sticky note and left it there 2 weeks before moving it to a new envelope labelled Margaret. On a cool evening in late August, I took that envelope to the cemetery. The groundskeeper had trimmed neat. Grass clippings stuck to Mom's name and I brushed them off with my thumb. The air smelled like warm earth and cut stems. I brought lemonade in a travel mug and sat on the bench Frank helped install when the town redid the veterans section. You can't talk to the dead. Not really. But you can tell the truth where they rest. We didn't break the house, I said. We didn't break each other either. A cricket wound up its little engine. I set a smooth creek stone on the base of Mom's marker, the way she used to keep one in her pocket to remind herself to stay anchored. On mine, I'd written with a marker, "Keep the house honest. Don't be cruel." It looked like a child's homework. Maybe that was right. Fall came and went. Dad hit every 15th. Once he called to say money would be tight because the garage roof needed work and Donna's car needed brakes. He didn't ask for a pass. He asked if the autopay would bounce if he walked cash to the credit union 3 days early. "Walk it," I said. "I'll still check the account." "Figures," he said. It wasn't mean. It was relief disguised as grumble. At Christmas, Pastor Ruth put a candle in his hand and he didn't fight it. He sang the verse he always sang, a little off-key. After service, he stood by the coffee pot and told a man with a new baby, "Hold them while they're small. You can't rent that back later." The man laughed because it sounded like a joke. I watched Dad's face. He meant it. I saw the first real truce in February when Donna posted on the church Facebook about the Margaret Mitchell Nursing Scholarship coming together. A $1,500 award for a local nursing assistant going back to school. She tagged me without asking. It was awkward and kind at once, like a pie left on a doorstep. We funded it with the court sanction, the small interest Dad's payments earned sitting in a separate account and a chunk from my deployment savings. I'd been holding like held breath. Linda helped with the paperwork so the VFW could administer it cleanly without tax troubles. Frank said, "Your mama would have liked her name doing something besides gathering dust." When spring leaned into summer, Dad made his 12th payment. Carol at the credit union printed the ledger and smiled like it was a baby picture. "On time every time," she said to Dad, and you could see the words put a little shine on him. We had one more thing to do. I endorsed the mortgage loan back to the credit union for $1 in consideration Carol's phrase, "tidy as a made bed." She slid the document into a plastic sleeve like protecting a library book, then passed me the recorder's stamped receipt. "Now the bank is back where banks belong," she said, "and you can stop carrying something that wasn't meant to live in a person's pocket." "Thank you," I said, and meant it bigger than the room. Dad was quiet walking out. On the sidewalk he stopped and looked not at me, but at the building, at the flag mounted to brick, at the clean glass. "So we're square," he said. "We're current," I said. "Square is different math." He nodded. "I can live with current." He put his cap back on by feel and we stood there another second. 2 people who had run out of performances. VFW scholarship night landed on a hot Tuesday. Folding chairs in straight rows and a microphone that squealed every time someone forgot to hold it low. The coffee tasted like it had been reheated 3 times. People showed up anyway because they always do. Frank opened with the pledge. Pastor Ruth said a prayer with one well-placed joke so the room could breathe. I presented the scholarship with my mother's name on it and tried not to overtalk. "This is for the person who keeps the lights on in the hard rooms," I said. "It's for steady hands and kind ones." The recipient was Maria Ortiz, a nursing assistant at the home where Mum worked, a single mother with a schedule you could set your watch by. She took the envelope with both hands like it held something fragile and pressed it to her chest. People clap the way people clap when they know a dollar never solves everything alone, but it helps a person stand a minute taller. Near the back, Dad sat with his cap in his lap. He didn't stand when the room stood. He isn't a standing kind of man. But when our eyes met, he gave me one nod, small and square. It cost him something. That made it worth more. Afterward, he shook Maria's hand. "You'll be good at this," he said. She said, "Yes, sir." And you could see it take root. On the way out, Frank walked beside me and said, "You know, we like big endings because they sound good when we tell them. But this was better." "What was?" I asked. He gestured at the room, the coffee, the folding chairs, the envelopes with too many staples. Keeping the ledger honest without turning it into a weapon. That's grown-up work. At home, I took the creakstone from my pocket and set it on the windowsill. The house breathed its small summer breaths. I thought about all the bills you can't mail. Respect. Decency. The cost of a laugh that doesn't land on someone's back. Here's the truth I learned standing in court and on courthouse steps and in rooms that smell like coffee and old paper. Respect isn't a bill you send someone. It's the balance you keep with yourself when the ledger finally adds up. When we count right, we can stop keeping score.